To get the most out of your lecture-based classes, try using active note-taking strategies. For instance, how can you get more for less? More content, less physical exertion of actually writing down the words that are being said in class. So try using abbreviations. For instance, rather than writing down an entire word, how about a letter that represents what that word means, or a few letters such as an acronym to represent a commonly used phrase. You can also just shorten that word, and the context of the rest of your notes is going to help you decide what does that word actually mean or translate back into. You can also consider creating an abbreviation glossary so that you can see, P stands for this, B stands for that, so on and so forth. If you also get in the habit of reviewing your notes shortly after class, let's say within 24 hours, you can make sure that you remember what these abbreviations stand for and just get more and more familiar with the content in your notes. So that's a good habit to get into regardless. Another way to shorten the time that you're spending actually writing things down is to try removing the vowels. And so right here on the screen you see how vowelless note-taking could be shortened simply by getting rid of A, E, I, O, U. Takes some getting used to, but it does save you time. It's a new habit, but it's worth experimenting with to see if you can quicken your pace a little bit. Another thing to consider is symbols. Not only do these save space, for instance, the arrow represents, translates into, leads to, cause and effect. But in addition to saving some time, it imparts meaning. And so you're really thinking about when you're seeing a symbol, there's probably an important point there. Other types of symbols include question marks or blank spaces for things that you missed, or perhaps exclamation points for something that's very interesting or something that seems quite important. In terms of importance, another thing to really be keeping an ear out for is your instructor's emphasis. What are those things that he or she considers most important? There's a number of indicators, and you can even make a game out of thinking about what is most significant to this person. Are there some cues or some triggers that you can be looking out for? And don't just leave it to chance whether or not you're going to remember what these things were that were emphasized. Rather, have a system of marking them in your notes so that when you go back to review, you can think about what things that you yourself want to emphasize. Another thing to consider is that you're not just trying to take down everything verbatim. If you can work on, even as you're taking down those notes, putting the information into your own words, layman's terms, paraphrases, examples, the meaning that you get down is going to be meaning that makes sense to you. It's easy to incorporate, easy to remember. Another thing with your note-taking is, again, you're not doing verbatim transcripts. Rather, what are those key points that can be represented by phrases or short statements? That's what you want to focus on. Also keep in mind that if you miss something, it's not worth spending the time trying to catch up or interrupting the lecture by asking the person next to you, hey, what did the professor say? Instead, just make note of the fact that you missed something. You can use a question mark or a blank space and then go back to your readings or ask for clarification after class. If you are using a tape recorder, with your instructor's permission, remember that this should really be a supplement. Don't use it as an opportunity to zone out, but rather let's say you're getting to minute 20 of the lecture and all of a sudden there's something really important or something really complex. Make note of the fact that it occurred at a certain time. Go back to that place in your recording, get the supplemental instruction through that, but don't necessarily spend your time listening through the lecture twice. If that works for you, of course it's appropriate, but often there's going to be more efficient ways to use that. And it does happen that sometimes even the best students get bored. And one of the reasons this happens is that the speed of talk is much slower than the speed of thought. And so take advantage of that difference. Use your mind while in lecture. Don't be passive, but rather think about, is there a way to reflect on what's the importance of this? How might I use this information? You can also try summarizing main points or how the points all come together. Perhaps you can even have a game of predicting what comes next. I wonder if the professor is going to follow the outline of the text or maybe connect to a current event. Stay engaged and active. Questioning is another fun method to use, thinking about, for instance, how does this work? What if or why? These questions keep you engaged, and actually they might be a source of study questions later on. And then finally, perhaps you can even do drawing of some sort. And so an image representing a metaphor of what the professor is discussing, perhaps some sort of chart or an image that just helps you to think about what this means, but perhaps in a slightly more creative sense. So that is your quick study break focusing on some active note-taking strategies. Clearly, there's plenty more to learn. For more information on these topics and more, visit the Dennis Learning Center website, or if you're on campus, feel free to visit us.